Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from today. We're so excited to have you with us here on this webinar today. My name is Steve Smith, and I'm Brivia's Vice President of Market Development. And we're thankful to have you here today. Did you know, you're looking at the screen here right now, did you know that this is our 16th webinar we've done in the last 24 months? And we would not have continued to do them if we hadn't gotten wonderful feedback from those of you that have joined us throughout the years, or throughout the last couple of years. So a suggestion we have today is perhaps you want to view an old Brivia webinar and have a team training with that. They're all available on our website. You can see it right there, briviaconsulting.com/webinars. And you're able to go on there. Our last couple of webinars also included helpful handouts for you and your team. So please take advantage of our resources that we're offering and connect with us if you have any questions or thoughts. So on today's topic of motivation, this has been one of our most popular webinar topics to date, and we have had over 400 people register for today's webinar. And some of you may have joined because you want to learn how to motivate those who work with you. Or maybe some of you are looking more inward and have decided, I need to get motivated. There's 6 weeks left in the year. I want to finish this year strong and just zoom into 2023. Maybe that's why you joined us today. But however, for whatever reason you joined us, we're really excited you're here. We're going to give you some simple Brivia concepts today that are clear, concise, and easily actionable. So you can actually learn something today and apply it yet in your workday or at home with your family. Our webinar here today is for 45 minutes, and that's going to give us plenty of time for Q&A. So please use the chat button. Please use the Q&A. That's going to be monitored throughout, and we love to interact with you as an audience. So I am going to bring in today's speaker, Chris Downey, who is Brivia's Vice President of Operations and one of our co-founders. And I'm so excited for what you have to share with us here, Chris, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I'm actually joining you today from a hotel room in downtown Calgary. So I'm not in my normal office in Winnipeg, but I'm just as excited to be here joining you, and I'm hoping there's no distractions. I've got the do not disturb sign on and the phone's turned off, but I'm excited to be here to talk with you about this idea of how to motivate the unmotivated. One of the things we have a good fortune of doing at Brivia is we do a lot of coaching. And we coach executives, we coach frontline leaders, we coach leaders in tech, leaders in health, we coach physicians. And one of the things that comes up, probably the most common in our coaching engagements in some form, is how can I motivate someone that just isn't motivated? And sometimes that's even how can we help people motivate themselves. So this one of the things that comes up most frequently in these sessions. We thought, why don't we take this on as one of our topics for our webinar series? So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about this and share some of our insights with you. And my hope today is to highlight for you that maybe it isn't as hard as we think to motivate someone to get people even just a little bit better than they are. So I'm going to share some insights with you to dive in on that. So I'm excited to be here. As Steve mentioned, let's use the chat. Feel free to let us know how you're doing. Ask questions throughout. Don't wait till the end. And if we can get to them, we will. But feel free to use the chat. Now let's start with this. I want to ask you, have you ever been unmotivated? Now there's more to this question, because of course, you've been unmotivated at some point in time. You wouldn't be human if you weren't. But let me ask this, and I really want you to use the chat here. Have you ever had something you needed to do? Maybe it was something at work you were tasked with, or maybe even something at home that you really did not want to do, and you were looking forward to it, or weren't looking forward to it. Okay, I'm all caps, yes. So something that you were apprehensive about doing or even dreaded, but once you started it or completed it, actually wasn't as bad as you thought. In fact, maybe you even enjoyed it, or you felt accomplished when it was done, possibly even had fun. So I would love to, if you're open to it, just put what that task might have been that went from, I'm dreading it, to all of a sudden it wasn't so bad. I will tell you mine. Again, let us know what those situations were, just so we can share. And writing a report, I love it. Thank you. Mine, it was peeling carrots. Okay, I'll tell you this. My first job was at the Winnipeg Convention Center, my first T4 job. I had just turned 16 years old, and I took a job at the convention center as a prep cook. Now, one of the things that if anyone's ever worked in an environment like the convention center, you know you're making lunch or dinners for either 50 people or even 5,000. So there's lots of prep that goes into those meals. And at the time, there was no automated way to peel carrots. So the only way when you're making dinner for 5,000 to peel carrots was to send somebody to the corner with this massive bag or bags of carrots and just spend the whole shift peeling. And no one wanted to do this naturally. Like, who's going to sign up for that? So it would always get assigned to the new person to go on carrot duty. And so my first week there, and I had heard about this, I had some friends that worked there. My first week I was there, big meal was being prepared. The chef said, well, who's on carrot duty? Okay, new guy, you're it. So I'm heading into the corner with another new person to go and peel carrots. And we sat there for almost 10 hours and peeled carrots. Now, what was interesting is I actually turned out I really enjoyed it. So I'll come back to that in just a moment. So thank you for putting this in. Annual performance appraisals, budget, writing reports. So there's lots of things that turned out to be better than we expected. Here's what I'd like you to share with me now. So in that moment, you were unmotivated, and then all of a sudden you weren't. All of a sudden there was motivation there. What changed for you in those moments? What changed for you that all of a sudden made it better than you expected, or even fun? What was going on? Who was there? What resources became available? Whatever it was, what led to making it better? And having the budget done was such a time saver. I could see how that would be impressive, Leslie. Thank you for that. So what contributed to it? Mindset. Thank you. I asked someone this question just the other day, and it's interesting you mentioned budget. It was actually someone that works in finance for a large financial institution here in Canada. And I said, have you ever had a task like this that turned out not to be so bad? And she said, yeah, expense reporting. Have to do it every month, and I just hated it. But I love it now. And I said, okay, well, what changed? And she said, I dreaded doing it month after month. So what I ended up doing is I partnered up with a coworker, and we assign time, we get music going, she brings in coffee, and now we just have fun. She was, the truth is I kind of look forward to the coffee and the relationship, but it's now one of my favorite things to do. And I look forward to expense reporting every month. I said, wow, isn't that interesting? That a task that went from something that they were dreading and actually putting off went to being one of their favorite things ever. Well, what changed? What changed in those moments where you got into that state of flow, or actually seeing the way things, actually seeing change? What I'm seeing here from one of those change, from one of the messages in the chat. Well, what I want to highlight is in that moment, something that was meaningful for you entered the equation. And that was the difference from to, okay, this is good. Once it started to have meaning, even if it's not the task, an element of even performing the task became meaningful for you. That was the difference between not feeling good about it and actually feeling okay about it. We're going to talk more about this, right? For that individual, that connection with the peer, that was meaningful. Listening to music, singing along, that was meaningful. They just happened to be doing expense reporting at the same time and were very efficient at it. So let me ask, thank you for the active chat so far. Let's keep this going. Here's a question for you now. Do you have somebody currently that you're responsible for that is unmotivated, that you're concerned about? Maybe it's an employee, maybe it's a peer, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's even yourself. Do you have someone that isn't motivated? And what does that look like? What does that look like? Okay, thank you, Aaron. Yeah, myself, that absolutely can help. And I'm hoping it's not the webinar that's unmotivating. And if it is, I apologize for that. But what does unmotivated look like? Well, it could be apprehensive, right? It could be apprehensive. It could be reluctant. It could be resistant, or any variation of these things. I'll tell you that carrot duty, I was certainly apprehensive. I had heard about this going into it. I heard kind of the talk about how people disliked doing this. I was a little bit apprehensive. I knew it was part of the job, so I was going to do it. I was certainly reluctant. I was kind of dragging my heels heading into the corner. And I definitely, if an option to go and do something else came available, I absolutely would have done that. I certainly was a bit resistant. So what's the difference between the people that currently aren't motivated, and maybe ourselves when we're doing expense reporting, we're having a good time doing here, what's the difference? What I want to highlight for you today and talk about is in that moment that you had that went from not good to actually okay, you became connected with something that was meaningful for you. And those people that currently aren't feeling motivated just aren't connected. That's the only difference. And I'm going to say this now, but I'm going to come back to this again. There is nothing wrong with you if you're currently feeling unmotivated. You're just not connected right now. And what we want to be able to do is help you and help each other connect to something even just a little bit. And that can be enough to elicit a response. Because this is what I want to highlight. This is really what I want to talk about today. And this is what motivates me. You'll notice my energy levels picking. I'm starting to move around. That in those moments, what entered the equation was something that was meaningful for you. Maybe it was relationship. Maybe it was accomplishing a task. Maybe it was just knocking things down. Maybe it was having fun. But once meaning came into the equation, that can be enough to tip the balance between unmotivated and motivated. Now, when I talk about meaning, I'm not talking about change the world meaning. I'm talking about in a moment, in a we'll call it a micro moment, the opportunity to have a meaningful experience exists. See, this is important. I want to highlight this for you. The opportunity to have a meaningful experience is ever present, no matter what we're doing, where we are, even in very challenging circumstances. The opportunity to have a meaningful experience exists, and it occurs once we connect to something that's meaningful. And that's what I want to talk to you about. So I'm not talking about creating change the world meaning right now. I want to talk about how to create meaning even in a moment. But I will highlight this though. If we start to do that, that does lead to a much bigger picture, a betterment for all of us. So let's talk about this in a little bit more detail, shall we? Well, what do we say when we say meaning and motivation? For those of you that have attended our webinars before or maybe participated in our course, you know this slide, you have seen it. Based on our work at Brivia, we believe that meaning is the pathway to all good things. And meaning and motivation are inextricably linked. That when we are experiencing meaning, and we'll talk about this in more detail, even to some degree, there's an energy there and we tend to be motivated. So when we're having a meaningful experience and we're motivated, well, what that leads to is higher levels of engagement and performance. But probably even more important to that, it also leads to overall well-being. So when we're experiencing meaning, we do better. However you define better, we do better. And meaning is the pathway to get us there. But let's dive in on this in a little bit more detail. What do I mean when I say meaning? So I want to share with you, I'm actually getting to some of our curriculum here. What I'm going to share with you on meaning and motivation actually comes from the work of one of our Brivia founders, Steve DeGroot. Many of you know Steve. And Steve has developed a model or a new model for optimizing human potential, performance, and perseverance. So what I'm sharing with you here today comes right out of that. So let's look at meaning and motivation. Motivation could be understood as a set of interacting forces from within the person. We refer to that as core four. I'll talk about that, but it's this energy within a person and from the environment, the motivator. So when the internal forces, the energy is connected to external sources, that can create a positive and fulfilling experience. We refer to that as holding meaning or being meaningful. So it comes from within the person and in the environment. And when they're connected, it creates, it holds meaning. That's actually what I'm seeing from Adrian, passion. Our passion lives there. I love that. Thank you, Adrian, for sharing that. So let's go a little bit deeper. So what are these forces that I'm talking about? Well, again, this is coming from Steve's work. Well, there's four things that, from our perspective, drive all human behavior. And we refer to those as core four: needs, values, goals, and strengths. Now, all of us have them. They're in operation in you and me right now. We have that in common. All of us have core four in operation. They're unique, though. Yours are unique to you. Mine are unique to me. We might have some overlap. But let's just break these down just a little bit. Needs are, well, they can be biological needs. I actually need to take a sip of water here. They could also be emotional needs. They could be psychological needs. They could be physical needs. But there's also values. Values are what's important to us. It's what we kind of hold dear. Maybe it's a value of family or community, or even it's a value of money, whatever it might be. We all have values. We set goals in our life, right? And they can be incredibly motivating. We set goals to meet our needs and live out our values. And over time, we develop strengths, right? Develop strengths to help accomplish our goals, which meet our needs to live our strengths. It's these core four are what drive our behavior, and they are driving your behavior right now. Now, this is it. They represent potent sources of meaning and motivation. And any one of them, when identified, can be leveraged. And when all of them are engaged, that's when it becomes pretty direct and intense. Okay, now, I will highlight this. Values are the most potent source of motivation. Now, values are the things that people will draw a line in the sand, right? And say, I would never do that. That's usually linked to a value. People might pound their chest when they're saying something that's linked to a value. The easiest thing to identify are goals, because we see that, right? When somebody they're going to a hockey game, that's a goal. What's driving them to go to the hockey game, we don't necessarily know. But all of these things, the hardest to identify is actually needs. Needs can be a little bit tricky to identify. But we are giving out signs all of the time of what our needs and our values are and what our goals are, and definitely our strengths. Strengths are our second most potent source of motivation, by the way. Let's dig into this a little bit deeper now. So, meaning and motivation. So as I mentioned, those energies come from within us. Those are a force. So think about the individual. All of us have needs, values, goals, and strengths that are in operation. They're there. Now, if motivation was only at the individual level, when someone's not motivated, it's very easy to say, well, what's their problem? Right? But motivation, again, it's that force and the source. You need both. So as human beings, when we get put into environments where we can connect with what's meaningful, what that creates for us is a meaningful experience. So the analogy that we like to use is just think about an outlet on the wall, right? Think of that as your source, and think of whatever the device may need to plug in a fan to cool you off, right? If it's not plugged in, it's useless. It's just that the cord's just laying on the ground, it's useless. But once that cord is connected with the energy source, the fan starts and amazing things can happen, right? That's what meaning and motivation, when people can connect with the environment, their core four connecting the environment, that creates a meaningful experience. And I will suggest that in those moments where you went from dreading something to actually enjoying it or feeling better about it, meaning entered the equation for you. Maybe not even meaning about the task, but meaning in some capacity. So really, what's the difference between the unmotivated and the motivated? The only difference is that the motivated are connected in some way to what's meaningful for them, and the unmotivated in that moment aren't. That's the only difference. And I want to reiterate this, especially for those of you that aren't feeling it right now. There is nothing wrong with you. Just like there was nothing wrong with me when I was heading into that corner to peel carrots, I just wasn't connected. Now, what we want to learn to be able to do is help each other and help ourselves get connected, even just a little bit. Because when we can get connected even just a little bit, that's the difference maker. So let me come back to my carrot story. I wanted to share that one with you. Because this is interesting. I went into that corner and peeled carrots and actually enjoyed it. Now, for those of you, I know there's some friends on the line today, and certainly my colleagues at Brivia know this. There are some things I really value that are part of my core four. And one of the most potent ones for me is relationships. I love relationships. I don't mean long-term relationships. I mean, I just love getting to know people. I love building relations. I love learning about people's perspectives on anything, really. So just getting to know people. I'll be at an airport later today. I'm going to probably talk to people in the lounge. I love doing that. I also enjoy fun. I like to have a little bit of fun. Now, as I mentioned to you, when I was on carrot duty, myself and another new person went into the corner to peel carrots. And what made that so fun for me is I had a chance to sit and talk to somebody, get to know them, and even joke around. So I learned about this person, and we joked around, and I was peeling carrots at the same time. Now, I didn't know this at the time. I didn't know this when I was 16, that was meaningful for me. But that was a difference maker for me. So the interesting thing was 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, whatever it was, I was on shift again, and the chef says, who's on carrot duty? And there was no new person. I just put my hand up to, I'm it. I'll do it happily. When I kind of skipped towards the corner, and I became known as the carrot guy, and I was good at it. Man, was I productive? I could peel carrots so fast. This is the interesting thing. Fortunately for me, every time I had that task, I was teamed up with somebody to do it. Can you imagine what would have happened to my productivity if the chef said, Chris, go peel carrots, you're on your own today. And I was just sitting in the corner by myself. Now that you know that about me, you would see, I'd probably find every excuse in the book to get up and go talk to this person or that person, and my productivity would have tanked. And I probably would be looking pretty sad in that corner, because at that point I would have been disconnected. Again, I didn't know that then, but I know this now about myself, right? And my peers and my leaders, if they know this, the more we can learn about someone's core four, the better positioned we are to put them into situations, into environments where those can be activated and leveraged, right? So I'm just for me alone, think about that. I like to have fun, and relationships are important. Think about this. Any one of you that are online right now that you know that about me, if you were my leader, what options would you have to put me into situations? Probably if something needs to be done, we're going to pair Chris up. And there's many more. There's hundreds more of core four and all of it. I just gave you two. Okay. So the difference between the unmotivated and the motivated is just the motivated connected and the unmotivated aren't. So how can we help ourselves and help others? First thing we need to do when we have a concern with somebody, we need to act, actually, not just a concern, even when we're curious, even when we think, hey, what's driving their awesome production? We want to ask ourselves this, the billion-dollar question. The billion-dollar question is really important, because the moment we have a concern with somebody, maybe we're concerned with their performance, maybe we're concerned with their level of motivation, maybe we're frustrated with them, maybe we're angry, whatever it might be. We need to first ask the billion-dollar question. The billion-dollar question is this: what do I know about this from their perspective? What do I know about this from their perspective? So let me ask you folks, what's the answer to that question? What do I know about this from their perspective when I have a concern about someone's level of motivation or their performance? Brad, thank you. Nothing. Yes. Some of you are probably familiar with this question. We call it the billion-dollar question because this is the first, often what happens, particularly when we have concerns. See, as humans, we have a need to have a sense of control. It's important to us. And when someone is behaving in a way that is concerning to us, we are very quick to create a story that suits that, so it gives us a sense of control. And the reason this is so important is, let's just say we're concerned with someone's level of motivation. What do we know about this from their perspective? Nothing. And we need to connect with that, because whatever we tell ourselves is our story. And that actually takes us further away from being able to help them get connected. We're very quick to do this, but think about it. What do we know about that new employee, not performing well from their perspective? Well, they're millennials, and millennials this, or are they coming over from the city and they're like that? Or, well, people like Chris. We create narrative that we believe to be true, and then we make the person the problem. But remember what I said, there's nothing wrong with them. They're just not connected. We need to help them get connected. So we first ask, what do we know about this from their perspective? And the answer to that is nothing. Now, once we connect with that, we have two options, and only two. We either find out their perspective so we can help them through it, or we let it go. That's literally all we can do with those two things, because anything else is just fictitious. It's our own story. And even though, this is why I love the image of this person relaxed on the couch, because this has been liberating for me. Whenever I'm concerned with someone's behavior, even if I'm frustrated with it, what do I know about them not calling me back from their perspective? Nothing. Okay, I have two choices. I either let it go or I find out their perspective. And even if it's important enough for me to find out their perspective, I don't put any thought into it until I find out the perspective, because whatever I tell myself is just, it's going to be my own story. And it's going to take me further away. So step one, what do we know about this from their perspective? But how do we help people? How do we access their core four, right? How do you understand that? So I want to share with you a few strategies. I want to look at this from two perspectives. The first is, how can we learn about someone's core four? So this isn't, maybe you're not dealing with someone that's unmotivated in this moment. This could be a new employee. This could be a friend. This actually could be a long-standing employee. You just don't know as much as you would as you'd like to. So I wanted to share, and these are really simple strategies, but how you can learn about someone's core four. Well, the first is this: notice when they are motivated. Notice when there's something that's happening, that when there's a spring in their step, when there's energy, what's happening. See, this is important. When we talk about core four, we talk about needs, values, goals, and strengths. Oftentimes people don't know what's meaningful for them because we haven't been taught that. Do you think Chris, or your 16-year-old Chris, knew what needs were at play, what values are at play? Absolutely not. No one had actually had a conversation with me about that, right? So oftentimes people don't even know what they need or what they value. I mean, we do know it, we feel it, but we can't always articulate, is where I'm going with this. So observe when you see somebody with some energy to them, what's happening? Who's around? What are they doing? See, these are now giving you indicators as to what their motivators might be. But this is important, and Neil just nailed it for us. Don't make assumptions. That's part of the billion-dollar question, right? What's happening? What do we think? Then let's ask them, what's going on that's making this such a great day for you? So let's not assume we know. Let's make some observations. We could ask, what parts of your work do you like the most, or are you most excited about? And they will start to give you some insight to what's important to them, what goals, or even what strengths that they have. And this doesn't even have to be in a formal meeting, folks. You could be walking down the hall, right? And ask these questions. I met up with a friend last night that I don't actually know all that well. I asked this one question about his job. Boom, it opened up so much conversation. We talked about our approach to parenting and all sorts of things that all stemmed from, what are you most excited about at work? And what he gave me access to were things that were important to him. Then we were able to have a meaningful conversation. Once we do ask these questions, we're going to listen for needs, values, goals, and strengths. Don't get hung up on what they are. Just know they're those things. If you hear someone say, yeah, I'm going to the game tonight. Or you're going to the game, tell me about that. Yeah, I get together with my buddies, and we go once a month, and it's lots of fun. Oh, so you get together with your buddies. It sounds like that's an important time for you. We've got some long-standing friends, and I really enjoy hanging out with them. Okay, see, that's giving us insight to goals, something they value, and even needs, right? And confirm what you think you know. This is important. If we hear something that's important to somebody, let's clarify that. Ask them. So let's just say 16-year-old Chris, it sounds to me like getting to know people is something that you really enjoy. Is that right? Yeah, absolutely. So again, think about my chef at that point. If he knew that, what he could have done. And Sarah, needs, values, goals, and strengths. That's the core four. And I probably should have spelt those out. So core four are needs, values, goals, and strengths. These are the things that drive all of our behavior, and they're operating in you right now. Some of you might be engaged with this. Maybe you have a need. Maybe you're actually hearing something for the first time. It's giving you some energy here. Maybe you've heard this before and you're not so engaged. You might not be as connected. So these are strategies to learn about someone's core. But what do you do when the person that that person you're concerned with, and maybe you don't know their core four? How can you help them? Let's talk about that. So remember, the first thing I want to say, and this is really important someone mentioned mindset earlier, and I think that's a key point. Whenever we see somebody that just isn't feeling it, there's nothing wrong with them. They are just a human being that just isn't connected right now. So we want to approach them with curiosity. We want to approach them with empathy, and with a desire to help. It starts with this. Ask yourself the billion-dollar question. What do I know about this from their perspective? And again, let's use the chat, folks. What is the answer to that? Help me out on this. What do we know about this from their perspective? I do know that I'm concerned but I know nothing. I don't know their perspective. That's the first thing I need to do, because whatever I tell myself from that point on is going to be accurate. Thank you for helping me out there, Neil. Appreciate it. So what the first step, what do I know about this from their perspective? Nothing. I know I'm concerned. So I'm going to engage in conversation with them. And I want to hear what's going on for them. And I'm not actually going to approach this with what's wrong. I'm actually going to say, what's going on? Because remember, I don't know. Maybe they are motivated. They might be incredibly motivated. I'll actually share this quick anecdote with you. I used to work in pharma, and I was doing some work with our sales team in the US. And I had been asked to come down, and they had some concerns with some of the players in the sales team. I was down in Dallas watching, and this is before I knew what I'm sharing with you now. And I was just observing behavior one morning, and the VP said, I want you to give me your insights on these people. And I watched one morning, and there was this individual, her name was Christine, and she looked to be very disengaged, and she wasn't really following the topic that was going on. That was what I created my whole narrative. And then when we got back from lunch, the VP said, so what are your initial thoughts? And I said, I think we got to keep our eyes on Christine. Pretty concerned about her, I think, and I created my own story. And this is really interesting. And then what she did, the person said, any questions? And she stood up and she had tons of questions. She was just processing. That's all she was doing. She looked like she wasn't motivated. She was incredibly motivated. She was dialed in. What did I know about this from her perspective? I knew absolutely nothing. I just sent all sorts of judgment her way. So ask the billion-dollar question first. Ask, okay, but if you're concerned, what's going on? And once they start telling you whatever they share with you, maybe they are struggling a little bit. Maybe some of their needs aren't being met. Maybe some of their values are being pressed against based off some of the decisions the company's making, the organization's making. Ask them, what do you feel that you need? And don't be afraid of the answer, because there's a likely possibility they might not know what they need. That's one thing. Or they might need more than you can provide. That's okay. Just say, for those of you who have taken our programs, you know this. If you were to have that, what difference would that make? How would that be helpful? And whatever they say next will start to open up some opportunities. Okay, so ask what they feel that they need. Ask how you can be of the most help, right? What do they need from you to help them just a little bit better, just a little, right? So don't be afraid to ask how you can be of most help. And then once you start to connect with what they need, what's important to them, or what goals they have, now let's look to the environment to find opportunities to connect that force with the source, because they are all around us. And the more we can learn about ourselves, our core four, and the core four of others, the better positioned we are to put them into situations where they can not only survive, but thrive. And we see this happen in a lot of, through the pandemic, in health. There's no shortage of tension and pressure. And I know we have a lot of friends from health that are on today. I want to thank you again for all the work that you've been doing. Some people have had incredibly meaningful experiences through that, even though there's been this incredible pressure that's been on there, because they've been connected. And some are really struggling, and there's nothing wrong with them. They've gotten disconnected. And as a result, and for good reason, that's when burnout starts to set in. So we want to ask the billion-dollar question, ask what they feel they need, how can you be of most help, and look to that environment, even just something, because that's often all it takes is one little thing to get things moving. I will say, Steve, I'm hoping there's some questions here. I see the Q&A is chat. I'm hoping this was helpful for folks. I will say the strategies I just went through here, both on how to learn and help, these are just scratching the surface of where we take things when we work with people on responsive communication. So this was just a bit of a taster of some of those things. Steve, I'm curious, are there any questions?
Yeah, Chris, we've had a couple come in. We'll just take them from the top here. How do you motivate a person who says they are only there for a paycheck?
That's a great question. How do you motivate a person that says, well, this is it? Remember, that is a goal. I'm there for a paycheck. So what do we know about them saying I'm there for a paycheck from their perspective? See, I know that sounds like that's nothing, but that's actually a concrete goal. They're saying it, and this is where it would start. So you're here for a paycheck. And I will share a story. This came up Steve and I were doing responsive communication with a customer, and this very thing came up. And someone said, and we said, what brings you here? What brings you to work every day? And I said, honestly, just the paycheck, just the paycheck. And we stopped and we said, can you tell us about that? So you're here just for the paycheck. Can you tell us about this? This was amazing. This individual said, yeah, this company pays pretty well. There's some struggles, but it pays pretty well. So it keeps me here. So, okay, so what difference does that make, getting paid well here? Oh, I get to do this with my family. And then they opened up tons. I love to go quadding with my kids, and I do this, and their energy shifted. See, the paycheck was a goal, but it was a goal to meet a need and to live a value. And what that individual did was gave us tons of access to his motivators. And what was really interesting, it's a shame Steve isn't on the line with us today, that person lit up because those core four there. So even the person that says they're here just for paycheck, they too are humans, and they have core four that are going there. So I would actually just say, can you tell me about that and learn a little bit about that? Even just a little bit. And I want to be clear about it. It sounds easier for me to say than do, but when they actually make their goal clear, that's actually a bit of a gift, because we're going to start from there and ask them to tell us about it.
Yeah. All right. That's good, Chris. I think you brought up a good point there. A lot of the solutions, a lot of the teaching here is it's simple, but not always easy. You got to be able to have those conversations. Another question came in. How do you advise people to approach people that may have hidden anxieties?
Yeah. So how do you advise, just make sure I understand the question. How do you advise people to approach people that may have hidden anxieties? Okay.
Yeah.
Start with this. We all do. Has anyone ever been anxious before? I absolutely have. And so I think this is it to begin with. This is key. Let's not make assumptions about anybody. They might have hidden anxieties or they might not. We don't know. This is where this is the power to what do we know about this from their perspective holds. And we want to enter it with empathy and care. This is very important. We're humans. We're delicate. We have these things. So we want to go in with curiosity and without judgment. And when we're going to learn to understand their experience. And that's important. Even if it's a performance issue, this is important, folks. Whether it's a performance issue or not, we first need to understand their experience relative to the issue. And we actually not only need to learn about it, we need to validate it, because for them, it's real. And once we do, and they feel that we care, okay? One of the things that we didn't get into the States in our curriculum, it's important for us to create a safe, significant, and situated environment for people. What we mean by that is situate is what's the point? Significant is making sure they know that they matter in the situation, and create some safety here so that they know what's going to happen with this conversation. And if we can create that environment, then it opens up some opportunities. So I would go in with the thought that there probably are other things at play, and we're curious. So we're not going to go in heavy-handed. We're going to go in to learn about their experience so we can help them get through it. Right. And this is really important. This is all in the spirit of helping people perform better and do better. But we can't help people perform optimally in any capacity if we don't connect with their experience. And that's where we need to start.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And we had a couple more come in. Folks, we still have some time. If you have some more questions, put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A. Chris, another question came in. What should you do if what the unmotivated person has is an unrealistic need?
Okay.
Or unmotivated person has unrealistic need.
Yeah, they have an unrealistic need. Okay, great question, and such a real example, because it happens so often. I think I somewhat alluded to that earlier, and I don't know that I probably didn't articulate as well as I should. So let's create a scenario here, and let's just say an unrealistic need is I need double the salary. Okay, so I'm talking to an employee and I say, what do you feel that you need? And they said, I need double the salary. And we know we're not going to be able to double the salary. That's just not realistic. Well, a natural response there might be, well, that's not going to happen. Or we might say, well, I wish I had that too. But this is important. Oh, so that would be, they're identifying a need, maybe a goal. Okay, so double your salary. Can you tell me about that? Right? And then ask this question. So if tomorrow your salary were to be doubled, what difference would that make? How would that be helpful? I don't know, maybe I'd be appreciated around here, or I know that I matter. Okay, so you're not feeling appreciated. You don't feel that you matter. Let's talk about that. See, oftentimes when people ask for to be unreasonable, they know it's not possible. There's meaning behind that. And that's what we need to uncover. So the way I actually like to say this is the more unreasonable the request, the easier it is. But don't react to that. Just say, okay, tell me about that. What do you need? Well, I need the prime minister to fly in on a unicorn tomorrow. Okay, so what difference would that make if Justin Trudeau flew in a unicorn tomorrow? Maybe things would be fun around here again. Okay, so things aren't fun. Let's talk about that. So I would just call it out and ask what difference that would make. And once their answers will probably illuminate some options.
All right. Well, the next question I'm going to kind of combine two, because I feel like this is a lot of our audience right now in healthcare and human services. What if what the staff articulates that they want is impossible because it's workload and they're trying to distribute workload, but they're a nonprofit. There's no more money for staffing. What would you suggest, Chris? And how do we deal with this in our healthcare customers that we work with?
Yeah. How, what do we need? I need less work, right? So what we need, again, we need to uncover, we need to find some meaning. So let's actually talk about that. What would it look like if we had less work? What would that, just tell me about having less work. And what you'll hear in their story are, okay, maybe there are some things that we can do. We can't change the workload, but what would having less work allow you to do? Well, I'd be able to do this, or I'd be able to do, okay, maybe there are some that might open up some options. So let's not, I agree, workload's not going to change. That is a obstacle that's real. Let's not continue just to run and pretend. Let's acknowledge that it's there. And what can we do given this workload to create a meaningful experience to the extent possible? But we often will default to the workload. So let's talk about, if we didn't have this workload, what opportunities would that create? And people start talking, and this is important. Well, it'd allow me to maybe pick up my research again or do this. Okay, so tell me about that. And we're going to get a little bit deeper. And once we start to uncover the meaning, then we can look to the environment where even just a little bit, we can allow them to create some meaning. But difficult for sure. Steve, does that answer the question? I see a question I also want to answer as well here.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I see a question that just came up, and I think it's very important here. What if I am the unmotivated person? How do I figure out my needs? So that's a great question, and thank you for asking it. Everything I talked about today works with the people we're responsible for, but also works with ourselves. Ask yourself the billion-dollar question. What do I know about how I'm feeling from my perspective? Like what's draining me right now? What might I need? And needs can be a little bit tricky, but I'll put it this way. Think of a time when you were feeling a little bit motivated in that environment, whatever it might be. What was going on? What resources were available to me? What relationships were at play? So if you're not feeling motivated now, connect with the time when you were and think about what was going on for you then. Now, I'll just share with you quickly for myself. I mentioned I like relationships are important to me, and connection, super important. Knowing that about myself, there are times when I can feel drained. Maybe I'm writing reports, I'm doing a lot of heavy work, and it sucks my energy, and I actually start to lose motivation. Connecting, and Steve, you're on the line, you might get a random call from Chris sometimes in the middle of the afternoon, and what I'm getting in that moment is just a little bit of motivation. And Steve could probably attest to this, that in our brief conversation, he probably hears my energy level come up, and then I get off the phone and I'm just a little bit better. So I would say, if you're not feeling motivated, connect with a time where you were doing better, even just a little bit. What was going on? What was at play there? And is there opportunity to do that? And grab something to start with that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think there's a couple more questions.
Oh yeah, we got probably time for one or two more. I see one I'd like you to answer is, what if they won't share?
Yeah. So what do we know about them not sharing from their perspective? Nothing. Mm-hmm. There's needs at play there. There's a reason they're not sharing. Maybe they're not feeling safe. Maybe they're not sure what you're going to do with this information. So I will say this, even if you ask them a question and they say nothing, you can actually paraphrase that back to them. So I asked you a question and you said nothing. And they'll say, yeah, I don't even understand the point. Why you asked me? Okay, so you don't understand the point. Can you tell me about that? You see, and that's going to open it up. So if they're not sharing, what do we know about them not sharing from their perspective? Nothing. Mm-hmm. And if we ask, again, I've asked you a question and you haven't said anything. Can you tell me about that? And then what if they do say something? Okay, let's talk about it. And maybe it is, and it could even be, Chris, I don't trust you. Okay, you don't trust me. That's thank you for letting me. I didn't know that. Let's talk about that. It will open up some possibilities.
Okay, well, we're going to stay to our promise of wrapping this up with 15 minutes left in the hour. What I will do, if you have questions here in the chat or in the Q&A, we're going to get back to you. Chris and I are going to come up with an answer and get back to you. I will answer one question that came up. Is it possible to send the presentation slides to the participants? Yes, we will, along with this recording, along with a special gift we're going to give you to access to the $1 billion question. So if you see this last slide, folks, please help us get the word out about Brivia and our practical solutions. Take a picture of this with your phone. Follow us on LinkedIn. We're going to be opening up more social channels here shortly too. So we appreciate anything you can do to help us get this word out. And thank you. There's a lot of you that stayed the entire time. We're so excited about that too. Please reach out. We'd love to continue the conversation. And thank you again for the biggest gift of all you've given us today is your time. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Take care.